We are ready for stitch number 16, the tulip stitch. This one here. I really like this stitch. I think I may have said that about a few of the stitches, but I do really like the tulip stitch. It does sort of look like a tulip. And here it is on my other sampler in similar colors. And of course you can, as I've done on my previous version of the sampler, stitch it in more than one color if you want, or just stitch it in one color. I think it would also be fun to do in a variegated thread. Well, let's try the stitch. So you don't have to draw the shape of the stitch. It's not really necessary, but you might want to do it so that you know that you're getting the right dimensions. So I've come up here at the top of this sort of tear shape, and what I'm basically doing to start with is make a lazy daisy stitch or detached chain stitch. So I'm going to put my needle back down in the same hole, and then I've got this loop of thread here, so just put my thumb on the thread so that I don't accidentally pull the thread to the back of the fabric. So don't pull the loop too tight, and then come up inside the loop, and then you can let go of the thread. There we go. And then make a little stitch over the loop to secure it. Make it slightly longer than you would if you were doing a detached chain stitch. See, like that. And then you come up either on the right or the left side, sort of halfway along the length of the stitch, and then you pass the needle and thread under that tiny stitch that secures the lazy daisy stitch, and then you insert the needle on the opposite side of the stitch, and that's the finished stitch. So we can do one more. Just go down here. So I come up at the top of the stitch and just catch that thread with my thumb or finger or however I'm holding it, and then I come up and catch the loop of the thread. Don't pull it too tightly. You want it to be slightly open to give it that sort of tulipy shape, and then make a tiny stitch, a couple of millimeters I think, across the loop, and then you come up halfway along the stitch, and where you come up it's approximately the same width as this section of the stitch. That's about the same. And then slide the needle under the tiny straight stitch and insert the needle on the other side. we go. It's actually not that dissimilar from the wheat ear stitch. It's just constructed in a different way, and the sort of triangle shape is below the stitch and not above it. Right, let's try it on the sampler. As you've probably seen, yeah, I have drawn just the beginning of a sort of pattern that you could stitch the tulip stitches, but you don't have to do that. If we look at my previous version, they're a bit sort of all over the place, and I don't know if you can see right there's a tiny really wonky one because I wanted it to fit into the shape of the letter, and these two are quite small as well. And again, I have used running stitch to fill in the sides or the outlines of the letter, because the stitch doesn't do that properly, at least not how I see it. So I've drawn one of the stitch shapes just to give me a starting point. So I come up at the top of the stitch and I catch my thread with my thumb, and then I insert the needle into the same hole. And because I use a knot at the end of my thread, I want to be careful that I'm holding that out of the way so I don't risk catching it with the needle, which is very easy to do. Ask me how I know. And then I come up inside the loop, and again leave the loop quite generous. If the loop is really tight, it's more difficult to do the stitch. And pull the thread, but not too tightly, and then make a tiny stitch to secure the stitch. I'm gonna insert it right on the line, and then I'm gonna come up halfway up the stitch and right on the line of the P to help me fill in the shape of the letter. And I'm gonna slide the needle under. Sometimes this stitch here becomes a little bit loose, so you can sort of pull it as you're passing the needle under, and then insert the needle on the other side. And that's my first tulip stitch. So let's do another one. Come up at what will be the top, insert the needle in the same hole and catch my thread, and then I come up inside the loop, or if it's not quite inside, I just move the loop to sit around the needle, pull the thread, make the tiny locking stitch, and then I come up. I could share the hole with the other one, but I think I'll do it a little bit next to it. I don't want them to sort of be interlocking. So I come up, slide the needle under, and you can see that stitch became a little bit loose again, so I just pull the thread, and then I can insert the needle on the other side of the P. So where should we do the next one? Here maybe? I may run into trouble because it's really only wide enough for 2 tulip stitches, but let's see what happens. Catch my loop, do the tiny stitch, come up halfway, and then slide the thread under and come back down. Right, so now I'm not quite sure what to do. Actually, what I will do is I'm going to fudge it a little bit. So I start as I would normally at the top of the stitch, and then I come up inside the loop, make the little straight stitch, and then I don't want to have the leaf or petal outside the pea, so I'm just gonna come up on the other side, and then I'm just going to insert the needle underneath the little straight stitch so that I have half a tulip stitch, sort of. And then I'm going to do that on the other side as well. So maybe that is what I'll do. I will alternate, at least up this section here, alternate with 2 and then 1 2/2. I actually quite like the look of that. And there's no rule that says that you absolutely must do the stitch exactly as it's supposed to be done. Just have fun and experiment. Right, so I hope you enjoy the stitch, either whole or half, or maybe tiny ones to fill in gaps. So happy stitching! The tutorial you have just watched is part of a series of 31 stitch tutorials that I have made to go along with the pattern for this embroidery stitch sampler. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. If you want to check out the pattern, you can find the link in the description. And whatever you're making, happy stitching!